for
I was there for 4 years.
4 years before leaving there to take the job at Red Truck last year. So can you just describe what Red Truck, like the quick description of what Red Truck Beer Company is?
Yeah, Red Truck Beer Company has been around since 2005. We're a small brewery right now on the North Shore. Just a small group of employees, total of 6 guys, where we've been brewing beer, delivering it. Never really had too many salespeople on the road, just one guy, Sam Payne, and a lot of you know who he is, who's done a great job with the company. And we've been at capacity for about 2.5 years now. We've been able to juggle some of our capacity by mixing it with lagers and ales. And now we're in the process of building a new brewery at East First Avenue that'll be open sometime towards the end of June. And hopefully we'll have more beer out into the marketplace in package and more draft sometime, mid-July.
Okay, great. So next I've got Don Farian. Is it Farian? Farian from Bomber Brewing. Don is also the co-owner of Incendio Restaurants and the Beercraft Restaurants on Cambie and on the Drive. Apparently the background story to Bomber is that they all have a hockey team, or you have a hockey team called the Vancouver Bombers, minor pro or something like that, and a beer league team, appropriately enough. And you and one of your buddies, Blair, decided that you wanted to start a brewery. Do you want to tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, I've always wanted to start a brewery, but I never presumed to brew myself. So I joined the team about 3 years ago, and we were drinking beers in the parking lot, and I was stunned by the Pilsner and started talking to Blair, and he was brewing it in his basement. So immediately, there's a story behind all of his beers. He brewed, each beer sort of was for one person on the team, and he was brewing beer with amazing character and already had a story and a brand. So that was about 2.5, 3 years ago, and we started the discussions then, and then it was, we got an offer to lease February last year and opened January this year. So.
Great. And Anthony Fustagli from Parallel 49 Brewing. Anthony's part of a group of owners that opened St. Augustine's on the Drive, which was kind of the other big beer tap house in town after the Alibi Room kind of became really popular. You guys had 50 taps going pretty quickly, and it was always my go-to place when I lived here when I wanted to see a hockey game, since the Alibi Room doesn't have screens. So, but anyway, I'll get you to introduce a little bit about what Parallel 49, how it all came to be.
Yeah, I mean, the story is very similar to Don's. We've kind of always wanted to open a brewery. It's a dream that's about 10 years old now. The original concept for St. Augustine's was actually to be a brew pub. As we got into it a little bit, we figured out that was probably impossible, and the concept changed really quickly into kind of what it is today. And when St. Aug's kind of reached the point that it was running on its own and it was profitable, and we could start looking at something else, we kind of went back to the brewery idea and just celebrated our second anniversary with Parallel 49 2 weeks ago, something like that. Oh, thanks. But yeah, I mean, we've grown fairly quickly, and you've probably seen us
Fairly quickly.
kind of a lot of places around town these days, and that's the short story.
Yeah, I say fairly quickly because I visited Parallel 49. I was writing an article for BCBusiness magazine actually 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago, Easter weekend when they first started brewing, and it was fairly, a good-sized facility then, but it has just expanded into neighboring warehouses and down the street and all over the place. Basically, it's becoming quite the enterprise.
It's like a virus.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought we'd start off with kind of a softball question. Has there ever been a better time to open a brewery in BC? Well, obviously no, there's never been a better time to open a brewery in BC. But I guess a little more specifically, maybe what are your thoughts on why this is all happening? Why, for instance, in Vancouver especially, did nobody open a brewery here for like 15 years? And why is all happening right now? If any of you guys want to jump in with an answer.
I think that, from my experience being in this business for a while, we found that Vancouver it really seemed like it was a real import market. It was big on the European lagers and whatnot. And I think that, with the way the craft, revolution has kind of taken place in the U.S., and, it happened in Victoria, and it is still happening in Victoria, obviously, on the island. And it's just started to grow and grow. You know, people looking for alternatives, you know, better beer, nicer beer, different flavored beers. And I think that you know, that's really started to catch on here. So with that, and it's just, and it, again, being, you know, that trend where it's really starting to take off, and more people are looking for those styles of beer.
Anything else to add?
Yeah. Has there ever been a better time? Probably 2 years ago. But I mean, I've got a bit of a different perspective because I've watched the craft beer community grow. We've opened St. Aug's. We're coming up on our 6-year anniversary at St. Aug's. And watching it grow there, I mean, we often wondered, you know, we'd get a lot of beer up from the States, and the demand was obviously growing very rapidly, and there was nobody stepping in locally at that time to fill it, and we couldn't really figure out why. We figured out a bit later, it's not as easy to start a brewery as it seems from the outside looking in, but yeah, I mean, demand has grown exponentially. It's still growing, and it's going to continue to grow, so can't see any end to it anytime soon. So it is a great time still to open a brewery, but 2 years ago would have been better.
For us, the time was, we were, as Jim said, it was a very import-driven market, and we had the beer crafts, and we opened the first beer craft in 2005, and we wanted to do quality import draft, not really mass marketed, and so we had 6 taps. That's all we could really justify putting in for the beers we wanted to carry. And then you could basically watch the beer culture grow in BC by the amount of taps we would add every 2-3 months. And we're at 30 taps per store now, and we have 5 or 6 of them rotating just to keep up with the beers we actually want to pour. We still do focus on import, but the craft choice, the BC choice that we have now, when we did start pouring craft, we were pouring U.S. craft because there wasn't great choices in BC. And now there's more and good choices, and volume-wise there's choices, which drives all of the other breweries to make good beer. So when there's more competition, everybody makes better beer.
So Anthony, you said that you found out it was a lot harder to open than maybe you envisioned. So can you talk a bit about that? What were some of the things you didn't realize or didn't expect going into it?
Not having any experience in the industry, I mean, my background, I was a software developer before I got into all this stuff, and, you know, software developer that loved beer, but just a software developer. Starting any business is tough. Starting a business with a lot of government control is tougher. There's significant capital required. I mean, equipment is not cheap. You know, I think gone are the days that you could take some dairy equipment, cobble it together, and you know, kind of make a go at it as a brewery. So the capital involved was not something that we had anticipated, and wasn't in any of our plans. We were well short of our projections there. And then, you know, the selling part of it, you know, you can have the best craft beer in the world, and it's still not all that easy to sell in a lot of cases. There's a lot of competition coming up from the States, and you know, we've managed to grow, but it hasn't been easy. So,
Any of you guys want to answer that same question? What was kind of the big surprise for you when you were getting into the process?
I think that, you know, for people that, you know, are looking to start a brewery, it's, you know, Jamie really had a lot of good points in what he said. It's, you know, if you're a good home brewer and you decide that you're going to get into this business, you really need to do your homework. You need to look at what, first of all, what you want to be, what kind of beers you want to produce, go out in the marketplace and look at that. Understand that you need to get people involved who have, you know, a lot of business sense and a lot of marketing sense. And you know what, if you're a good brewer, you know, that's great, you know, go ahead, but you need to have those other, you know, areas covered off. Because it's, your money can bleed out of your pockets in a hurry. And when I mean a hurry, it's just like you got holes in your pockets. It's all falling down around your ankles.
I wouldn't say there were surprises, because I come from the restaurant business, so, but when my biggest, and what your biggest surprise might be, is that you'll feel like the government does not want you to finish this. They'll constantly throw new regulations or no rules, or they won't know what the rule was, but somebody told you yesterday. So persistence pays off, but at a cost. So the biggest surprise you're going to run into is you're going to feel like, I'm going to make great beer, never. So.
So speaking of government, I know that here in Vancouver, one of the big challenges is dealing with the city and the type of regulations they have, and with the new lounge licenses and things like that. But you also have to deal with the province. Is there some just general comments you can give about dealing with those levels of government?
I think the city, in defense of the government, when we first opened up 2012, the previous brewery, I believe, was R&B, in your little slideshow there. They opened up during a civil strike, I believe, so they didn't actually get any of their permits, or everything was just rubber stamped for them. So the actual last brewery that the city opened up was Storm in '95. So you can imagine they actually hadn't opened one of these businesses in over 20 years, or 20 some odd years. There's not a lot of people that know, like in the city, have the technical knowledge of what is required. If you walk in and say, I want to start a clothing store, they open those up all the time. They know exactly what to do. 3-4 years ago, you walked in saying, I want to start a brewery, and they kind of all look at each other and go, uh-oh, one's coming. So I think they've made a lot of effort. They've reached out to the Vancouver brewing industry specifically with the whole lounge situation, and they're getting a lot better. They're getting a lot better just simply because there's more of them opening, and they're more used to it, and they now have the internal knowledge of how to do it. So
Thanks to you.
yeah, well, thanks to there's a few of us
Blazing our trail.
So
Yeah, I didn't mean to run the government down, because specifically in our situation, our inspectors were great, but because they'd already done it and learned from opening theirs. So so I know what kind of drains you're going to need, and I know it. And so it wasn't a big research project in our situation, because they had done it before and caused their delays. It saved us our delays.
And just some of the experiences like we're going through lately is when you are trying to get your brewery going, you need to get a manufacturer's license. You have to get an excise permit from Revenue Canada, but you have to have your manufacturing license to have that. And if you want to get occupancy permit, you have to have or before you can get a business license, you have to have an occupancy permit. And so when you're opening up and you're going through all these things, it's a real time killer, especially when sometimes what they don't get is you've got all these people employed, and you're spending your money, but you're not bringing much in. And I know that in case of the city and meeting with them and the Craft Brewers Guild, they are looking at things to speed up that process. The government is a little bit more painful. Just like the boys said, it's blazing trails for others, and that's what's really starting to happen. So,
If you guys could change one thing, one government rule or regulation to help the brewing industry, what do you think it would be?
Maybe some way that you don't require a lease or a signed lease document before you can apply for your manufacturing. If there was some way to say, hey, can I get a brewing license here before you have to commit to the location? That's the biggest risk that you take is.
You're paying lease or paying for a
That's
building
probably
for
what
months and
stopped
months.
them from opening a brew pub, is that they would have sat on it through an application process for over a year paying rent on a space they don't know that they'll ever get the approval for. So for us, our situation was different. We were lucky we had a landlord who was trying to move out, so we were able to get an offer to lease 7 months before they were actually leaving. So our whole process started 7 months before we even got into the building. So all our permits were approved 3 days before we got our lease and our keys to the building. So we were able to walk in and start the build. But those are the horror stories you hear about opening a brewery, is paying rent for 7, 8, 9, 10 months while you wait for your applications to go through. And you don't know if you're going to get it, but you've been paying rent this whole time. Mind you, the city has never said no to a brewing manufacturing license, so it's a fairly good bet, but it's still an expensive bet.
And I would agree.
yeah, I mean, in our case, we from the time we took possession or got the lease and started paying rent to the time that we produced beer was about 9.5 months, and that was considered really, really fast. Cole Harbour, who had just opened up right before us, was well over a year. That's a lot of lease to pay when you're bringing in exactly zero revenue.
So what about the distribution system, the government stores and the private stores and all that? Are you guys for like totally privatizing the system? Are there any changes you'd want to recommend within the way the government sells beer now, or what do you think about it?
In my opinion, the distribution system that the government offers is one of the most positive things going for the craft brewers right now. You get a distribution system at 10 cents a liter or 20 cents a liter anywhere in the province. Unfortunately, the warehouse is full, so unless you can go in with a business plan that gives them a reason to move another SKU out, there's no space left, really. They are moving to a larger space, and they will be able to take more in the future, but for us, there's no way I could be selling beer in Prince George. There's no way I could be in Souk or anywhere on the island if I wasn't being distributed by the BCLDB. So.
I would agree. I think that to privatize the distribution center would be very costly for the craft brewers. At 10 cents a liter for delivery, just for an example, where we'd send 80 dozen beer to Fort St. John on a private carrier. That 80 dozen cost us $500 to send up there. Through the LDB distribution system, it was more like $32. So, if we want to be selling our beer, throughout the province, regardless if it's in a private or a government store, we really need to have that distribution system.
Okay, a little shift in topic here. So part of opening a brewery is, building the brewery and accessing equipment, tanks, and all that stuff. So, I know that Parallel 49 sourced their first tanks and stuff from a manufacturer in China. Did you guys do the same thing as well?
Germany.
But we also have suppliers like Newlands, for instance, right here, and I think there's Newlands and Specific Mechanical on the island, and what's the one out in the Okanagan called again?
Ed Ripley.
Ripley,
Ripley
right? Yeah.
Stainless.
So is that? Maybe talk about why you guys. I don't mean to make a big stink of it, but why you didn't use local suppliers, for instance, or how important is access to materials like that?
For us, it was less of a money thing. Again, getting back to the whole, you've got a lease that you're paying. You need to get up and brewing as quickly as possible. The lead times that we would have had from local distributors, we were looking at 18 to 24 months. So potentially we could have bought the equipment or put the down payment down on the equipment, waited 2 years, and then took a lease. But we were already at the point where we kind of had space available, space that we wanted. We needed to get up and running. So through China, we were able to get about an 8-month lead time, or maybe even last 7 months until it hit the shore. Another couple months to set everything up. Factor than a price factor for us.
Ours was both. As far as savings for the steel out of China is you're saving significant, even delivered FOB Vancouver, I'm saving 50%. But also, again, we're just starting our first expansion, and we've ordered more tanks, and I've got a 50-day turnaround, whereas I'd be on I can't have that kind of lead time locally because they're busy. It's a good problem to have, but the savings that you get are remarkable, and the steel quality is getting considerably better. So.
In Germany, that sounds like it's deluxe, luxurious equipment.
Well, one of the things that we did was, we looked at probably 20 to 25 breweries throughout Canada and the U.S. and went and looked at a lot of different systems. And for what we wanted to do, we just thought that was a good choice for us, and went with a manufacturer by the name of Rolec that is relatively new, and their technology and everything is. We thought was extremely high, so we decided that that was the route that we wanted to go.
And in terms of construction, with so many new breweries having opened up in the last couple of years, are there any companies that are specializing in this now, or like tradespeople, that kind of thing, or does that even matter?
It's actually kind of funny because we get calls all the time. Again, we kind of went through all this a couple years ago, and so we get breweries calling us asking, who'd you use for your electrical, your plumbing, your blah, 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 and we send them all over. It's great for the breweries because they've got people with specific experience building a brewery and the trades involved in that, and it's great for the tradespeople because we're all good guys, and it's business for them, so it's win-win.
I just asked Anthony.
Yeah, and we're using a lot of the same.
Okay, what would be one piece of advice you wish someone had given you before you opened your brewery?
Have more money.
Double your budget.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I think that, you know what, when you're looking at building a brewery and you've got a budget set out and you've got your 10% contingency fund in there, you know what, add another 15%, just in case. Because you know what, when you're building, you never know what comes up. And it does or can get very costly. And yeah, you prepare to have a few sleepless nights, for sure.
So each of you, well, Red Truck isn't open yet, but each of you has a on-site brewery lounge, right? Which is a new thing. It's a new regulation or endorsement, I guess, that came through in the last year or two. Can you guys talk about how important that is to the craft beer scene here in Vancouver and in BC in general?
It's been a way bigger source of revenue, first of all, for us than we had ever anticipated. I mean, we're kind of in an industrial part of Vancouver, kind of on the east side. We didn't think we'd get a lot of walk-by traffic, and yeah, I mean, we're on pace to do well over $1 million out of that little room this year, which blows all of us away. And what's happened now, we have Powell Street with just down the block from us. I believe Cole Harbour is going to be opening up a room soon. Storm just opened one up. Bomber came into the neighborhood, and we're really building a community. So it's not just us in some little outpost in an industrial part of town. There's, it's actually a destination now. And you got the same little hub kind of developing around Main Street. So, I mean, it's been huge getting people connected with the businesses, with the industry, so.
Yeah, we started our business plan without the lounge in mind because we didn't know if it was ever going to happen, and if it was it then turns out being close to 50% of our sales. By the same token, it's 50% of our volume. So you don't anticipate moving that much beer out of that room, but when you're moving it 2 liters at a time, it goes out the door really quickly. It puts a lot of pressure on the production that we weren't expecting, so in a good way. But it's remarkable to see, 30 to 50 kegs a week going out of. We have 25 seats.
And because we're, with our new brewery and the expansion, what we're doing, and coming on a little bit later, we were able to review that and decided that we're actually going to have a diner attached to our brewery. So we'll have a full-on food and everything, liquor primary license attached to that.
So that's not a lounge; it's an actual liquor primary.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Okay, one more question, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. I guess just the idea of the market saturation. I mean, so many breweries are opening, and Jamie said he doesn't think there's a bubble. What do you guys think? I mean, you want to comment on that?
The more the merrier. Love it, because I think the more craft breweries that we have, it just continues to grow the segment, and I just think it's awesome that there's so many that are coming up, and in our area where we're at East First Avenue, and with the more that are going up, Main Street and in the whole area, it really becomes a bit of a destination place for craft beer drinkers, and it'd be the same, I'm sure, that in your area as well. But for tourism, to bring people into the province, you're going to start seeing more tours that are. People are going to go on vacation that are going to go from Portland to Seattle to Victoria to Vancouver, and they might do that in 10 days or 2 weeks. I just think that whole idea just brings more and more people into the craft segment, and will continue to grow that segment.
I don't think there's a bubble at all, I think there's all ships rise with the tide. I think. The way the craft beer community can get together, can get 8 breweries in the same room, 10 breweries in the same room, and everybody from each brewery knows each other and supports each other. It's to use the hockey analogy, it's about the logo on the front, which is craft beer. It's not about the name on the back, and everybody's helping each other, and there's a whole lot of room for a whole lot more, I think.
I mean, in terms of saturation points, we're kind of at capacity. We can't make any more beer. Most of the breweries I talk to are at the same point, so we're obviously not at a saturation point yet. or else people would start having excess capacity. So there's room for more.
So starting right next to me here, we have Tim Barnes, who is the VP of Marketing and Sales for Central City Brewing. Tim has been with Central City for 2 years and a bit. He came previously from LG Australia, and before that, Tim Hortons, Evian, and Labatt Breweries, so he knows a little bit about beverages in general, I'd say. And Tim has an MBA from York University, correct? So can you tell us a bit about Central City and what's going on with your brewery?
Central City, we just built a 65,000 square foot brewery. It is a beautiful facility. We did a bit of a different strategy than some of the other breweries doing step change. We just went big. We went for the Grand Slam. So a little bit of pressure on me now to sell more beer.
So you guys all probably know that Central City there was a brew pub first that opened in Surrey in 2003, and grew their brand out of that basically. Because I didn't think you mentioned that. Next we have Ian McKay, whose title is officially the Chief Beer Conversion Architect for Driftwood Brewery. Is also known as their Vancouver sales guy, basically, in a nutshell. Ian has been in the beverage business for nearly 30 years, apparently, both here in Canada and the UK. He was the Western Canada sales manager for Constellation Brands, the largest winery in the world, before joining Driftwood 4 years ago. You want to talk a bit about Driftwood, what Driftwood is?
Sure. I've been with Driftwood for over 4 years now. I'm one of the partners in the brewery, and we started in October 2008 in the worst recession in 60 years. So that was awesome. We had literally enough money to make the beer, and that was it. Nothing else. So but we had a belief in our beers, and we knew what we wanted to do, and we had a path, and we've never deviated from that since. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
And finally, we have Adam Mills, who's the sales and marketing manager, or your website says co-sales and marketing manager, I don't know, with Four Winds Brewing. So Adam joined his dad, Greg, and his two brothers, Brent and Sean, is it? To start up Four Winds in Delta last year. They're celebrating their first anniversary in about a week on June 1st, or not a week, just a few
June
days.
1st.
And previously, the family had a paint business called Mills Paints, which Dad Greg had sold a few years back, right?
2006, yeah.
And then, so Adam also had his own sideline business, painting pubs and restaurants, you told me, which gave you good insight when you first wanted to sell the beer. You had good contacts, right?
Yeah, I didn't know I was doing it at the time, but I was a painting contractor for 6-7 years with my own company, and I was primarily, my niche was pubs and restaurants. And so built a network that way, and when we started talking about opening a brewery, there was an immediate contact list there, so it helped for sure.
Great. So for my first question, I'm just going to say, given the current boom and the interest in craft beer, I mean, doesn't it just sell itself? What do you guys actually do?
Take calls.
You just sit by the phone and wait for Alibi Room
or
to call
texts,
you?
maybe. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if I have much to offer. There's such sales experience here, and maybe I could start just by saying that I probably single-handedly helped propel both of your guys' businesses while researching for Four Winds. So
Thank you.
I know it's a bit of a silly question, but okay, I guess I'll talk to Ian about Driftwood. Driftwood, you know, when it first started, it was focused on like Belgian styles and had a really specific group, and then Fat Tug IPA arrived on the scene a year or two into the scene after they opened around 2010, and I remember walking through the brewery in Victoria about a year and a half ago when they did the big expansion, and Jason, the main brewmaster, waved at these giant tanks that had just come in and said, "That's all full of Fat Tug for Vancouver." And so basically, you know, here's a brewery. I think I've been told that it's pretty much half or more of the beer that Driftwood produces is Fat Tug IPA. Maybe you can talk a bit about what that beer is meant to Driftwood and in general, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where we're inordinately proud of all the beers we put out. We're obsessed on being true to the style. But we're also people phone us and say, hey, we want to have you Fat Dog on, and can you come and see me? But I've also turned around and denied customers or pulled a tap because the pub doesn't get craft. They see this as this fad and they bring it in going, oh my God, I really have to have this in. And I've actually turned around and I've actually gone in, unhooked a keg and coupled it and said, no, I'm sorry. And the guy said, well, I'll take smaller kegs. I said, no, you don't get it. You're not understanding what you're doing here. You've got an old mentality of pub here. And just, I understand what you're trying to do, but until you actually understand this and embrace it, and I will help you and train your staff as well, but you don't get it. So I physically gone in and taken away and lost business because at the end of the day, our integrity and our word and our beer is everything to us. And we're so passionate about what we're doing. And I think the better word is obsessed, actually, that we don't want to be everywhere. And but the beer has just been this, it's not without its headaches either. It is, every brewer in this room knows what it's like for hops and getting them. But we're fanatical, and we train our people really well. So yeah, it's been an amazing beer for us, and we get a lot of fun and a lot of humor out of it as well. And it certainly keeps us on our toes as well, because we cannot ever let any of our beers fall below what we call our minimum standard, which is we want to try to make the best we possibly can.
Maybe we can bring up the images again. I wanted to ask each brewery to talk about what they're doing with their branding, since that's such a big part. So we'll start with Central City here, Red Racer. So we have this whole series of Red Racer beers, different colors. Maybe Tim, you can talk a bit about what that branding means for Central City.
Yeah. So we do get some confusion because some that don't know us would say, "Are you Central City or are you Red Racer or what are you?" So we do get a lot of questions. I had a good friend who's a lawyer, who we went on a ski trip recently, and he was challenging me on our branding strategy, saying, "What are you doing? You're a brewery. Everything should be Central City." Where Red Racer came from was actually a painting on a wall in a cafe that our founder actually saw and loved the painting, asked the artist if we could use the image, and that image then ended up on our can, and that was for one beer. That was for our pale ale. That then actually, as soon as we put that on the can, our sales in that beer almost doubled overnight. So he kind of went, okay, maybe we're on to something. And we've just kind of carried, so it's just really actually started by accident. What we're doing now is with our seasonal beers and our special releases, we're actually using more Central City branding. And with our, let's say our core or our everyday beer, it's Red Racer.
What are you going to do when you run out of colors?
Multicolor, I don't know.
Rainbow, pink, there's a few left. Okay, can we cue up the next one? Okay, Driftwood. So we don't have all of the seasonal beers on this. We just have the kind of the core group. Ian, do you want to talk a little bit about what Driftwood tries to do with its labels?
Sure. Christ, I got a loud voice. Our labels, most of you will know about our Naughty Hildegard ESB, which is personally one of my favorite beers, and I always shed a tear when it's gone for another year. But all our labels are designed by a lady called Margaret Hansen, and she's been with us from day one. And so we give her the gist of what we want it to look like and the theme, and she'll come back with us with the artwork. So hence what Margaret's done there. But with the Naughty Hildegard, the 4 partners, we all got an email one day from this lady who just launched, I think it's our second year Naughty Hildegard, and she said, and she wrote this beautifully eloquent email to us, all the partners, and she said, "I'm so sorry, but I'm so offended by this label because it shows a nun she's lifting up her skirt, holding some hops, and she's got fishnet stockings on and lipstick and red shoes." And she was very offended by it. And she said, "Do any women even work in your brewery? Did she have to show you her Naughty Hildegard?" And so we were like, so we had to write back, and we CC'd in Margaret Hansen to say, actually, this is designed by a woman. We have 5 women working in the brewery for us, and we're very proud of that. They do fantastic jobs for all of us. So it's a kind of a collaboration between Margaret and ourselves, and now we're doing a little bit more in-house as well, and a little bit more on our own thought. But all the labels are vinyl. They cost us 4 times as much as they normally do. They really pop and stand out. My favorite, personally, is got to be White Bark Still. It's just this iconic totally not what the beer should be, what you think it's going to be inside. So our goal is to literally just go and grab you like that. You know, like, oh, what's this all about? And we don't have a whole ton of POS. We don't, you know, it's too corporate for us in a lot of ways. So a lot of it's based on that there.
Okay, and then with Four Winds, so we kind of have a core group that's all very similar style, and then we have the other series. Adam, if you want to
Yeah,
talk about
I
that?
mean, much like Central City with the Red Racer brand, we wanted to keep we wanted to brand Four Winds with our core beers. Like our regular year-round beers are these four, which there's an oat porter there that'll make its way out next year. But the Pilsner Saison IPA Pale Ale, we really wanted to brand Four Winds. We wanted that to be central. And get that out to the market, the name, get people familiar with the name, but then that's why we kept it simple, just IPA, Saison, Pale Ale, and whatnot. So that's our year-round offering, and then we just sort of like changed the color scheme, what I was mentioning, that's similar to what Central City did. But for our limited and sort of seasonal releases, we're trying to do something completely different and name our beers, and then try to brand that name, not have Four Winds so central. And then what we've decided to do with this particular series that all of our beers will be released in bombers. We're playing off the whole wind theme. Like for Four Winds, we sort of like we take inspiration from every direction in the world, and we brew all kinds of different beers, and it sort of keeps you know, no sort of limits to what we can do, and it's basically we're going in many directions. So with the Zephyrus series, we've decided to do a series of like really West Coast style beers, and Zephyrus is actually the Greek god of the west winds, and so that's why we chose to roll with that name, and then that's sort of like really hoppy West Coast inspired beers. That's that series. For that series, we decided to take that wind theme like a step further and actually incorporate the sort of nautical maritime flags. They're like distress flags or signal flags or whatever they're called. And so what we do is we take the juxtapose, for instance, we take the first letter of the name juxtapose, J, and we take the corresponding flag, which is the Juliet flag or the J flag, because there's, you know, a flag for every letter, and then we made a pattern out of that and just kind of went with it. So then the series is kind of limitless because we take the P, take that flag and make a pattern out of that. So it's kind of just, I don't know, it's just one of those clever little things that we're trying to incorporate into our branding, but it's probably a little bit too long-winded for some people, but that's what it is. And then we have another series as well, which we don't have images of, but that's our Eurus series, and that would be the Greek god of the east winds, which are beers inspired by like European styles and sort of like the original sort of heritage or history of beer. And so those are all done in a more elegant sort of like classy kind of foil and more elegant lines, European style, and done in a 750 ml bottle with a cork and cage. So those are the three different series: our year-round, our Zephyrus, and our Eurus. That's what we're doing.
So just staying on the idea of talking about packaging, it seems to me like from a consumer perspective, you know, you go into a bottle shop and you see these rows and rows of bottles, and it seems like more and more so it's about the label trying to grab the attention, right? What do you guys think on that, or how important the label is, what that means to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I mean, we put a lot of thought into it. You know, even our seasonal beers, we try to make sure that whatever the style of beer is, and you know, some of them are quirky and funny. Some are traditional, like the Gosa label. That label actually has that's a traditional Gosa bottle. So we, you know, a little bit of heritage there as well, and going to the past to create the future. But yeah, we literally try to make it so everything stands out. I mean, all our sour beers, which we're normally proud of, they all come under the Bird of Prey. Everything comes under that one label, which is kind of a separate thing. First, we want people to know, hey, this is one of the Driftwood's Bird of Prey series. It's a sour beer. So they know, people know this, and they run for it.
Hello. Yeah, I think labels are really important. It's kind of a contradiction. Like when we first started, we researched a lot of different breweries in the States, and some of our favorite breweries have like the worst labels. And so we were kind of like, oh, I don't know. It's interesting. Like, is it important? And we had that discussion a lot, and we were kind of like, well, the beer is more important But the fact is, I think that a lot of us are visual creatures, and we like to see beautiful things. And so, yeah, walking into a liquor store with 1 million bottles, of course, you're going to gravitate to something that looks good to you. And so it's important, and I think it's important to appear like there has been a lot invested, not monetarily necessarily, but just a lot of thought and a lot of time and planning invested in your branding and your labeling, for sure, because your consumers or your customers wants to know that you care, or that you care enough to sort of like put in the time and the effort to hire the appropriate people to come up with some really great stuff, because they want to believe that you're going to be around in a couple of years when they start giving you, when they become your customer. So, yeah.
I'd say just quickly, it depends in terms of, so for what I'd say core beers, it's really very important. Our ISA, which you're very familiar with, Joe, we launched that fluorescent green. And we launched it in a 12-pack, and everybody thought we were crazy. We probably were. But when you put that box up on the shelf, you can see it from 30 feet away. And that, I'm sure, helps us with sales. There's just no question about it. But when you do like a really special beer, like we did a anniversary porter for our 10-year anniversary, yes, the label's important, but really it's about the beer and the story behind the beer that matters. And so I think the deeper you get into like more of this real special beers, that's where the story behind the beer actually matters more than the marketing or the label or the shelf appeal from 30 feet away.
Okay, great. So beyond labels and branding, what are the other things that your breweries do to promote yourselves?
Well, I think, again, going back to the obsession of, trying to make the best out there kind of thing, and you want to have those tweets come through, or an email or whatever, a text come through from someone to say, oh my God, this is fantastic. And I'm not just saying about my beers, it could be a beer I've had of yours, Tim, or yours as well, Adam. And it's like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And you want people to do that. So you absolutely try the best to sit there and say, wow, this is an amazing beer, and people start to talk about it, and they start to tweet it, and they start to go through. I know when we do Sartori, I will shut my phone off for Twitter, because I will blow my brains over a wall if I see that stupid little blue bird one more time, and it's just not worth it. It's like, oh God, no, it's just a nightmare. But it's funny you said about your last comment about labeling. There's 5 partners at the brewery, I'm one of them. All of us, to a person, hate the Fat Tug label. And we would love to change it, but we know we can't, even though we think it's so awful. But it's like, it is what it is. It's become this iconic, weird, ugly, but okay, we'll live with it, fine. Maybe in 10 years we'll look at it, but we know we'll be lynched, so no.
So I guess you're kind of talking about social media there as a way that you promote the brewery. So what other things do you guys do? How about you talk about your website, Adam?
Our website that has been in construction for 16 months. I think we kind of decided that, no, I'm just kidding. We're still working on it. But the problem is that our graphic designer is like a total artist, and he's mostly a painter. And so he's just like lives this like painter life, and trying to track him down is crazy. And so every time I call him, it's like we're working on the labels that we should have been working on 3 months ago. So to get him to like work on the website has been difficult, and he's really not all that technical like in that respect. So we've had to get like other people involved to like help facilitate what we're trying to do. And it's been this long, hilarious thing. But I think it's kind of become funny, like people like are like, well, you're not a legitimate business these days unless you have a website. But for us, it's whatever. I mean, if you want to try our beer, try our beer. But our website will have things of interest, of course, but it'll be there when it's there.
That's awesome. We've seen each other at every event that we do. The one thing that I'd say about craft beer, anyone that's thinking about getting into it, it's a lot of work. So from May to September, write off most of your weekends if you're in sales and marketing, because you're at events. It's a hand sell. So, and we all do it, right? So you're not above it when you're, sales and marketing head or whatever. You're there, you're doing it, and you're talking to your customers, and you're serving beer. That's probably the most important thing I think that we do in craft, for us anyway, in terms of the marketing. is actually talking about our beer and not, not relying on an outside company necessarily to promote your beer, but actually have the real people behind the business talking about the beer to your customers. That's probably the most important thing I think we do. The second thing that I've seen more of now with the marketing in craft beer is getting more sophisticated. I'm seeing like a lot of players are actually stepping up in a big way. So it is becoming more marketing oriented for some of the larger players. But there's a real unwritten rule that you don't advertise. So, you hear ads. I'm sure people have heard ads, Sam Adams ads in BC playing right now. You wouldn't hear a Driftwood Fat Tug radio ad, right?
But why not?
Unless you're planning something, I don't know.
Can you guys talk about that?
no.
Because it strikes me. You don't hear ads. You don't see a lot of print ads. Certainly don't see ads on TV very much. Can you guys talk about why?
Well, I think the whole idea is that you're trying, every craft brewery is trying to do their very best to create the best beer they can, and they hope that should be enough. That should be what sells itself. In the beer, I think, for us anyways, we're always sort of believed that we would make beer that would sell itself. Otherwise, we weren't really doing our job. And so it's kind of an oxymoron. Like, it's kind of like you wouldn't really want to, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but you're right. It is like an unwritten rule, yeah.
I think as well that I think my favorite thing about doing this is, and I've been doing this for a long time in various forms, is it's a very much, and it's weird, but it's grassroots. And, I'm a partner in this brewery, but I'm also, out the front talking to people, educating, training, getting to understand. They want a million questions. And, as Tim said, between now and October, you're running like an idiot. But the reality is, though, it's the grassroots thing. We're talking to people, and I'm schlepping kegs, or I'm changing couplers or something. Like, you're just running around, and all part of that becomes part of marketing, because the reality is people start talking, wow, that's really cool that, that you take the time and you do these things, you invest all the time to do this kind of stuff, you're delivering on weekends and what have you, because, oh my God, you're out of beer. Yes, of course I'll get it to you. And I think that, it's one of those things where I think all of us are so proud of the fact that, yeah, it is hands-on. You're right there talking to people going, yeah, please try this. And you see their face when they try something they love, and it doesn't matter what brewery it is. It's so fantastic when you actually connect with them and they go, oh, this is glorious. And that's the bit I live for.
Can you each talk about a marketing initiative that was really, really successful for your brewery, even if it wasn't something that you essentially planned, maybe? Or
Fat Tug.
that was easy. Beer sells itself. Tim, do you want to talk about anything?
I could talk about our silly maple bacon beer that we just did. Yeah, see? It's silly, I know. Gary hated me for it. We did it with the Jeff O'Neill show, which is, I guess, I'm talking two sides of my mouth, really, because they promoted the heck out of it. But we did it because we one of the things in craft beer that we noticed is that, when you introduce that product to someone that may not have tried it, it's amazing how they switch so quickly. And so what we see is, when you get out into the valley like Langley or Chilliwack or Chilliwack, sorry, Mission, you can tell I'm from there, right? You get out there and it's like you get varying levels, of engagement on craft beer. But in Vancouver, it's almost like, what? You don't drink craft beer? Like, it's expected. So it's a very different, it's different within each market, and that was why we did the maple bacon, and we sold out, we're pretty much almost sold out completely in 2 weeks. We did 993 cases, and that was gone. And so we didn't expect the demand that we had, and we actually ended up with a lot of frustrated customers because there was actually not enough beer for the demand. So it was a mistake, but it was, I guess, a good mistake.
Have either of your breweries done other marketing initiatives that you want to share with the crowd?
We haven't really done much, to be honest. No, we haven't had time to really think about it. Which is, 1 year into it right now, it's hard to believe that I'm sitting here, to be honest. But no, we haven't done a whole lot of marketing outside of putting all the effort into our actual branding.
No, and we're exactly the same, to be honest with you. If you look at our website, it's appalling. We literally have never had the time to sit there and go, okay, what do we want this to do and look like? It's all about the beer, and we're fanatical on that. And I think, I mean, probably the thing we want to be known the most for is our sour program, and we put so much heart and soul into that, and it's hugely important to what we want to do for now and for the future too. And it's just learning the best about each that we can, each style, each beer, and trying to put the best out there and going, okay, and a lot of it is just that. The beer becomes the marketing for us, and we do need to do more. We know our site sucks, all of us do. But the reality is we want it to be, we want our beer to do everything for us. And so we will get around to doing a website, something that actually looks nice, but I'd rather just have the meat and potatoes and be done with it and make a really great beer.
I think, like, I can say one thing too, is that I think people are often surprised at how this industry kind of is. It's an incredibly unique industry in the sense that the consumers and the fans of craft beer are so engaged in the community, like of craft beer, that they just speak and they talk, and it's a social. It's like a social thing, you know. Like when you're having a party, you're drinking beer. So the way that it can. The way that it can kind of just get the ball rolling, or the snowball effect, is incredible, and it's unique to this industry, I think, just because people are talking and you know, they're excited about it. So if you're a up-and-coming brewery in Vancouver and you're a fan of craft beer, like, how are you not going to hear about that brewery? Like, you're going to hear about it. So.
Okay, I'm just going to ask one more question and then I'll open up to the crowd. I guess from a sales perspective, I mean, everybody talks about how the craft breweries in BC are so, you know, friendly and collegial and everything else, and recognizing that their main competition is the big guys. But is it really the case down in the trenches? Like, are you guys fighting each other for taps, or what's it like in that side?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's nothing I like more than to take a line from one of the big guys. But the reality is, you know, I will lose a line to you, and I will lose a line to you, and I will take a line from you as well. That is the way it goes. But the funny thing is, and it's something I've never experienced before, when I was in the wine industry, if my counterpart in my, which is Mark Anchi, my biggest opposing winery, I wouldn't put them out if they were on fire. You never had that at all. But the reality is, we literally help each other out. And I was just talking to Jim Dobbs about this, you know, how we help each other out. I mean, Sam is a damn good friend of mine, and he will go out of his way to help you. And I will do the same for him or other people as well. And it really is this, we do try to help each other out. Yeah, I'm going to take your business. I want your business, but not at the expense of doing it the wrong way, though. It's got to be done right. And, you know, you talk to you partner with the pub or the restaurant that you're working with, and you want them to understand why you're putting your beer on. It's not just to take a line. It's because you want to create a partnership where they're saying, I have great food, great beer, great wines, great spirits, and it all starts with this.
Anything to add, you guys?
I think we got into the industry knowing that the whole kind of concept or idea behind craft beer is that we're experimenting and trying different things all the time. And so that lends itself to being open to more people joining it and just having the camaraderie amongst us too. That's the nature of it, I think.
Yeah, definitely it's a friendly industry. We really do help each other. It's still competitive, but it's not at the level right now where it's in some markets. Like I see in some markets that we sell into, it can be quite ruthless. It's not here. And I hope it never changes because we actually do help each other out quite a bit. If a customer, for example, is asking for too much or is trying to play us off each other, we'll call each other and say, yeah, right? And that's like an unwritten rule that, you know, you kind of help each other. You play by the rules, and yeah, we do take business from each other. But there's so much business to be had. It's not at the point where you're ever feeling like it's a cutthroat kind of situation. There's, you know, the tide lifting all boats is definitely very true. But in some markets we sell into, it's not the case.
All right, everybody, you guys are so well behaved, all in your seats, and it's been 12 seconds of silence and awkwardness. So much to say. First of all, thank you so much for making history at British Columbia's inaugural craft beer event. So how about a round of applause for yourselves? Seriously, we've done the research. We've combed the microfiches. There's never been an actual microfiches. Remember those? there's never been something like this attempted. So thank you so much for giving us your time and your money. And a big round of applause for Joe Weeb, the thirsty writer. He's very Canadian and saying, you know, in a personal plug, and I'm sorry that I'm promoting myself, but his book is so, it's the Bible. Seriously, you need to read this thing. It's unbelievable. It's exhaustively researched. The passion that we all feel for the craft just oozes out of each page. Now I've completely, it doesn't ooze. It's a very good book. I recommend reading it. It's pretty phenomenal. Pick it up. He's going to be signing. Are you signing? Oh, he'll be signing. Now he will now be signing. Oh dear. So you know, the BC craft beer scene is happening. I mean, it's the boom is on. It's pretty spectacular. And you've been here, and you've been here to celebrate it, and you've given your time, and you've really learned. You know, we've seen 2 hires personally, just kind of running around. I've seen 2 hires, one in a urinal, over the course of this seminar. Take that for what it is. I've seen a book deal and a movie deal struck, kind of like at the break. And distribution deals as well. So there's a ton of networking and a ton of people that can really help, whether or not you're thinking about starting a brewery or into it, which is a very awkward segue into the fact that we're staying here for about another hour or so. The food will keep being served. The beer will flow, so definitely don't leave. Hang out, make the connections. This is the place to do it. And you know, the big thing is, I mean, we're all in this room and we're all celebrating a moment. And I don't think there's anything better that illustrates a moment than the fact that while we were in here for the past 3 hours, a friggin' BC brewery just opened. Like, while we were here, doors swung open. So congratulations to Main Street Brewing, just down the street. Like, it's poetic, man. And as for advertising, marketing sales panel, I think BC Business has proved our cred. And despite whatever unspoken code doesn't apply to advertising, feel free to support this thing next year, because we're going to do it, and we will be knocking on your doors. All right. So that's it. Taxis and transit are available outside, so we don't get sued. I had to say that. And as I said, we're here for another hour. Please do stick around. We're doing this again next year. So, you know, we'll keep an ear to the ground, an eye out. And also, in the meantime, bcbusiness.ca/beer. We're working with a lot of you to amalgamate all the business news in the scene in the province. So, so keep your browser tuned to that. Follow us along. And we're really passionate about the scene. We want to see help it grow. And lastly, I don't work for Tofino Brewing. This is the only piece of local brewery swag that I had. But maybe they'll support us next year as well as a result of that. Thank you so much. We've got about an hour here. Network, say hi, and thanks again for coming.